Now, gaming is a different landscape now than it was when Bethesda first set off the microtransaction controversy bomb with Elder Scrolls IV Oblivion's infamous horse armor. The very concept of microtransactions was seen as bizarre and repugnant, and while many of us still hate them, we have to accept that they probably aren't going anywhere. Unless they're so bad that the developers had to remove them, and that's exactly what we're here to talk about today. As I'm Jules, this is WhatCulture.com, and these are 10 insulting microtransactions that video games had to remove. Number 10. Loot boxes. Middle-earth Shadow of War. Regular microtransactions were bad enough, but when publishers introduced loot boxes, which are packs of randomized rewards inspired by mobile games, they significantly crossed a line. In fact, they crossed so far over the line that actual governments had to get involved. In the case of Middle-earth Shadow of War, the whole concept seemed especially egregious for a couple of reasons. First of all, Shadow of War is a single-player game. The concept of loot boxes had been mostly exploited in multiplayer titles, where the logic kind of made sense. If multiplayer games are running for years, it's understandable why a publisher needs a steady revenue stream, even if it is a predatory one. In a full-price single-player game, though, well, it comes across as downright greedy. Second, the finale of the game was essentially one unbelievably long grind of taking and defending bases for hours, and if you wanted to see the game's true ending, beating it was the only way. What publishers WB Games essentially did was lock the game's ending behind a sloth's pace grind that could only be alleviated by spending real-life money on loot boxes, all the while ensuring that you wouldn't even get anything helpful from those loot boxes. People justifiably revolted, and the feature was removed. Number 9. Star Cards. Star Wars Battlefront 2. You knew we were going to talk about it, so let's get it out of the way early doors, right? Electronic Arts is infamously a major AAA video game publisher almost universally hated by gamers everywhere. But with Star Wars Battlefront 2's microtransactions, they overreached so far that they attracted similar ire from politicians. And this was due to their predatory approach to microtransaction loot boxes within the game. In addition to usual items like in-game currency, items and weapons, Battlefront 2's loot boxes also included Star Cards, a needlessly complicated system for improving your character's abilities. This literally meant that by spending real money, you could objectively give yourself an advantage over other players, and the more you spend, the better your odds of getting really good cards was. At least that's the gambler's mentality that EA was exploiting, especially in younger players, to make stacks of cash. Fan backlash was enough for EA to remove paid loot boxes entirely. However, this practice also drew national attention, even resulting in the state of Hawaii introducing legalization targeting such terrible business practices. EA stock plummeted amidst the controversy, and the company gained a reputation amongst parents for encouraging their children to gamble. And with the company committing more to single-player games going forward, it seems to have changed the direction of the company completely. Number 8. Pay-to-win boosters. Ghost Recon Breakpoint. Ghost Recon Breakpoint being released to middling reviews was somewhat confusing. Its prequel Wildlands didn't exactly light the world on fire, but did debut to generally favourable reception, and it stands to reason that a sequel would just reinforce and build on that foundation. And while Breakpoint may have had its own unique gameplay issues, that isn't the reason why this game got 5 out of 10 and underperformed in the scores. The big issue with this is its egregious microtransactions. Publishers aren't even trying to hide their greed when literally every single thing in the game can be bought with real money. Every weapon, weapon upgrade, vehicle, item of clothing and cosmetic item can be purchased with real money, making the bulk of the actual gameplay actually redundant. And if that wasn't bad enough, the early access release of the game also featured time-saving boosters, allowing players to purchase experience points, crafting materials and even skills. Rightfully received as an unambiguous pay-to-win scenario, publisher Ubisoft later removed the items, claiming that their inclusion was an error. Yeah, you're telling me, mate. Number 7. XP boosts. Marvel's The Avengers. In another case of an unapologetic pay-to-win model, Marvel's Avengers, already a huge disappointment in virtually every other regard, also introduced experience points boosts that players could purchase with real money. With one of the game's main criticisms being a truly insane grind to develop your characters, the post-launch edition of the XP boosts was especially damning. And if that wasn't bad enough, this came after promises to players that microtransactions would only be for cosmetic items that didn't affect gameplay. And in yet another comical twist, the XP boosts were also introduced after a patch that significantly reduced the amount of XP earned in the actual game. Combined with the game's overall poor quality, it really felt as though the publisher Square Enix was pulling out all of the stops to make money back on a surefire expensive disaster, and doing so in the most insulting ways possible. Players were so incensed that it took less than a month to remove XP boosts entirely, but we can't help but wonder how much they made off of them during that brief period. Number 6. All of them. Redfall. After a significant information leak consisting mostly of in-game screenshots, it was revealed that Redfall, the next game by developer Arcane, was going to be something a little different from their usual output. Games like Dishonored and Prey featured large open levels, but were still praised for being linear single-player games with engrossing stories, but leaked Redfall content suggested something resembling Borderlands or Destiny, games notable for being multiplayer and based largely on the pursuit of loot in the form of items and guns. The fact that another of these leaked images showed a microtransactions store came, sadly, as little surprise. If it's going to be a so-called live service game, a genre known for having years-long lifespans, it would require microtransactions in order to maintain revenue. Needless to say, it was very much not what fans expected, and they weren't happy. In a later official gameplay demo where the microtransaction menu was notably absent, it seems like Arcane had heard them loud and clear, but with many details about Redfall still under wraps, well, time will tell on this one. Number 5. Cosmetic item pricing. Halo Infinite. Halo fans were excited when developer 343 Industries released the game's multiplayer component for free ahead of the full game's scheduled release date. And the gameplay was largely praised. After some controversial changes to previous games in the series, Infinite's multiplayer was just a return to form. It felt like Halo again, for the first time in a long time. And you really can't blame them for including microtransactions here. Any reasonable person understands that multiplayer components designed to live well past the life of a full retail product need money from somewhere to keep running. So at least the fans were a little understanding here, right? Well, until a Reddit user did a little simple math and determined that in order to buy all of the items, which were only available for a limited time, players would have to cough up over $1,000. People were rightfully furious, especially since such pricing contradicted promises previously made by the developers. 343 then were practically compelled to make changes to their pricing, as well as the very structure of the store itself in order to offer more varied options for purchases. Number 4. Shaders. Destiny 2. Now, shaders are a popular kind of item in Bungie's Destiny that allow players to change the color of their equipment. This feature was beloved by fans, and with limited character creation options, shaders went a long way for diversifying player appearances. Now, naturally, Bungie brought them back in for Destiny 2. I mean, why wouldn't they? It's a fairly basic mechanic seen in similar games, but there was one major change here. Shaders were now single-use items. Unlike in the original, where shaders were permanent and could be applied at any time, shaders in Destiny 2 would disappear after one use. This resulted in a form of scarcity that made players not actually want to use them. What if you found an amazing shader, apply it to your weapon, and then find a new one 10 minutes later? This mindset led to many players anxiously hoarding them, waiting for the right time. It should come as no surprise then that the reason for this was that the shaders were now available for purchase. Oops, you wasted that shader you were saving. Oh, no worries though, you can buy it back, right? Ugh, sooner or later it's bound to turn up in a loot box. Thankfully, Bungie eventually conceded, making shaders permanent again. Number 3. Item pricing and availability. NBA 2K18. The 2K Sports series of games, which includes NBA 2K18, has a solid and dedicated fan base. Being closer to a basketball sim, they love the series for its realism. So the fact that the publisher 2K chose to turn this entry into an absolute grind in order to push microtransactions wasn't just enraging, it was disappointing, which we all know is way worse. I mean, just ask my parents. Not only was the in-game currency required to upgrade your character, but it was also required to unlock the vast majority of options for customizing your character, a favorite feature of fans. Grinding to upgrade your character is bad enough. It eliminates the natural progression of the game, forcing you to replay content that you might not want to, but locking almost all of the cosmetic items behind exorbitantly expensive pricing was nothing short of greedy. For context, playing the game normally might net you around 500 virtual currency. That means playing a minimum of 2 games every time you want a tattoo or a pair of sneakers, which are priced at 1,000 VC. Developers heard the outrage of fans and lowered the price of many items to 100 VC. Unfortunately though, for many fans, it was too little, too late. Number 2. Gems. My Little Pony. Friendship is Magic. Developer Gameloft's My Little Pony Friendship is Magic is hardly the first or only mobile game to feature overpriced microtransactions. In fact, such practices are the norm for mobile games, most of which are free to download. But what makes Friendship is Magic stand out is the nature of the game itself, targeting mostly children. The goal is to return the missing 6 protagonists to their world, but the catch is that advancing through the game only unlocks the option to purchase them individually with gems, which are scarce and doled out one at a time every few levels. For context, the final pony cost a staggering 500 gems or around $30, and that is just one. Just to complete the game required literal years of grinding or around $100. Everyone was legitimately turned off here. Not only was this an obvious attempt to exploit the game's many teen and even adult fans, but children as well, many young enough that they don't understand the value of money. Eventually, Gameloft dropped the price of that particular pony to only 50 gems or $8, but that was all. And it came with a begrudging announcement attributing the outcry to a select few older fans. An audacious statement to say the least. And number 1, loot boxes again. Payday 2. Payday 2, a cooperative shooter series with a niche but devoted fanbase, actually released without microtransactions, so it's a little confusing that developer Overkill chose to add them later in the form of in-game safes that required drills, which were purchased with real money, in order to open them and reveal a randomized weapon skin as a reward. So they were basically loot boxes, a wildly unpopular mechanic as it was. But what's worse than that is that unlike most shooters, these weapon skins weren't just cosmetic, but also boosted the stats of weapons, meaning that the game became not only pay to win, but also a gamble as you don't even know what you were buying. Overkill lost the loyalty of its fans practically overnight with this. But in a rare display of humility, Overkill actually took the L on this, removing microtransactions entirely, making the weapon skins free, and going on to add more free content in the months that followed. Even better, this came with a mea culpa acknowledgement that they broke their fans' trust and would work to regain it. Fortunately, they did. Now, if only the rest of the industry could be so decent, right? And there we go, my friends. Those were 10 insulting microtransactions that video games had to remove. I hope that you enjoyed that, and please let me know what you thought about it down in the comments section below. As always, I've been Jules. You can go follow me over on Twitter at RetroJ, but the O is a 0, or you can swing by Instagram where it's the same handle, RetroJ, but the O is a 0. Hope to see you over there. But before I go, I just want to say one thing. Hope you're treating yourself well with love and respect, my friend. This is a bit of positivity that you do not have to pay for, because I wish for nothing but the best for you, my friend, and you bloody well deserve all the good things in life, okay? So big love to you. Now get out there and smash it. As always, I've been Jules. You have been awesome. Never forget that, and I'll speak to you soon. Bye.